The rain had begun its gentle fall, soft tapping on the windshield of the black 1995 Buick Roadmaster as it crept down Route 47. Headlights on, hazard lights blinking in solemn rhythm. Behind it, a long line of vehicles followed in silence. An unbroken funeral procession winding its way to Ridgewood Memorial Cemetery. Driving the lead car was 81-year-old Harold Hell Simmons, retired Marine who had served 2 tours in Vietnam. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white with quiet grief. In the back seat lay the flag-draped casket of his younger brother, Franklin Simmons's Army, Purple Heart, father of 3. A stroke had taken Franklin quickly, but grief moved slowly, crawling through Hal's chest like an unwelcome guest. Beside Hal sat his granddaughter Emma, just 12, dressed in a black dress, too grown up for her years. She looked out the window, her hand resting gently on her grandfather's arm. Her father, Franklin's eldest, was stationed in Japan and couldn't make it back in time. Hal had stepped in to lead the family through this farewell, and Hal, being Hal, insisted on driving Franklin himself, just like he'd promised their mother when they were boys. As they approached the town of Tilden's Fork, a small junction with one blinking stoplight, the procession slowed. A police cruiser idled on the corner. Hal signaled left a routine turn toward the cemetery just 6 miles out. But before they could complete the turn, a loud siren wailed behind them. "The ticket pullover," the amplified voice barked. Confused, Hal did as told. The procession paused behind him, forming a silent line stretching nearly half a mile. A young, stocky police officer stepped out. Officer Brent Colley, new to the force, barely a year into the badge. He strode toward Hal's window with visible irritation, already holding a notepad. Raindrops beaded on his cap. "Sir, do you realize you just held up traffic through a major intersection? That's a violation of City Code 52A, obstructing the right-of-way without a municipal escort." Hal blinked, stunned. "It's a funeral procession. I understand that. But you didn't file a permit with the city. Without an escort, you're not authorized to interrupt traffic flow." Emma's lip trembled. "But we're taking my uncle to be buried," she whispered. Officer Callie scribbled on his pad. "That may be, but rules are rules." Behind them, drivers began exiting their vehicles, murmurs rippling through the procession. Some stood with phones recording, others with expressions of disbelief. Hal looked down at the ticket. Water already smearing the ink. $135 fine. He didn't say a word, just nodded stiffly. Callie walked back to his cruiser, satisfied that he had enforced the law. He didn't notice the rumble of engines approaching from behind. 5 minutes later, from the far edge of the road, came the low, synchronized growl of 2 state trooper vehicles, cutting through the wet air with purpose. They moved with speed, but without panic. Lights flashing, sirens off. The vehicles bore the insignia of the state troopers' honor guard. They stopped right beside the Buick. Out stepped Trooper First Class Elijah Reyes, tall, dignified African-American, clean-shaven, with a military posture betraying his years as a former Army Ranger. Behind him was Trooper Dana McCarthy, red-headed, with a silver badge glinting on her chest. Reyes approached Hal's window and gently tapped. "Sir," he said, voice calm. "Are you Harold Simmons?" Hal nodded slowly. "We were contacted by a fellow Marine who saw what happened on social media," Reyes said. "Said he recognized the vehicle. Said you might need some help." He smiled. "We're here to escort your brother home." Hal's eyes welled up. That was my brother back there, Franklin. He served in the Gulf. He always said if he died before me, wanted me to drive him one last time." Reyes placed a firm hand on Hal's shoulder. "That's exactly what you'll do." He turned and walked directly toward Officer Callie, who had exited his car, confused. "Officer Reyes," said firmly. "Trooper First Class Elijah Reyes, State Patrol Honored Detail. We'll be taking over the procession from here." Callie frowned. He was blocking an intersection illegally. Reyes didn't flinch. "That man is a decorated Marine. He's burying his brother, a soldier, a hero. You disrespected a funeral procession and a veteran in uniform. That's not just poor judgment, that's disgrace." Callie opened his mouth but said nothing. Trooper McCarthy approached and handed Hal an envelope. Inside was a copy of the citation torn in half. We took care of it, she said kindly. The escort what happened next became the stuff of legend in Ridgewood County. The state troopers pulled ahead of the Buick. Lights flashing, not in emergency, but in reverence. They drove slowly, clearing intersections, stopping oncoming traffic, saluting the fallen as they passed. On side roads, police officers from neighboring towns stood at attention, hats removed, hands over hearts. Word had spread quickly. In a local diner, a waitress told her customers, "That's Simmons. His brother died. They're taking him home." People rose and walked outside in silence, placing hands over their hearts as the procession passed. Even children riding bikes paused and stood, still in the rain when they finally arrived at Ridgewood. Over 200 people had gathered, most of whom didn't know Franklin personally. Veterans in full uniform stood in rows, many of them brothers in arms, who'd simply heard over the scanner. Emma held her grandfather's hand tightly. "Grandpa, look!" She pointed to the ridge above the cemetery. At attention stood a line of veterans, Marines, Army, Navy, saluting the casket as it was carried from the car. Among them stood a retired general, silver hair peeking from under his cap. He had driven an hour just to be there. Hal's lip trembled as the bugle played taps. The apology after the burial. As the crowd dispersed, Officer Colley arrived. He wasn't in uniform, just a simple hoodie and jeans. His eyes were red. "I didn't know," he said to Hal, voice low. "I was following protocol, but I didn't see you. I didn't see the man behind the wheel, the man who served." Hal studied him for a moment. Then he extended his hand. "You saw the law," Hal replied softly. "Now you saw the man. That's all I ask." Callie shook his hand and nodded. "I'll never forget this. I'm sorry." The ripple of the story of the ticketed veteran and the state troopers who stepped in went viral the next day. News outlets across the country carried the headline. Hal and Emma were interviewed on local TV. Franklin's name was shared with honor, but more importantly, change followed. Ridgewood. City Council passed an ordinance within 2 weeks. All veteran funeral processions would be guaranteed escort without prior permit, no questions asked. Police departments across the state initiated new training modules focused on funeral protocols, with an added section titled Simmons Procedure. Trooper Reyes later wrote in an open letter, "It's not about one man, it's about the thousands. Like him, men and women who served, who walked through hell and came home quietly, asking for nothing but dignity. We owe them that much, at least that much." The closing note a month later, Hal received a package at home. Inside was a letter from the governor, thanking him for reminding the state what honor looked like. And beneath it, a medal that read, "For service, in uniform, and in grief." Hal placed it beside Franklin's folded flag. He looked out the window at the fading light, Emma playing in the yard, and for the first time since Franklin passed, Hal smiled. Final message, in a world often ruled by rules and red tape. It only takes one act of human compassion to cut through. What started as a misunderstanding became a moment of unity, reminding us that respect, empathy, and honor are never outdated. We all carry stories. We all carry grief. But when we walk each other home, even just for 1 mile, we carry hope too.